All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Built to Scale. And I got my buddy Jerry here. That Jerry's up in New York, and he is really looking forward to 8 to 14 inches of snow about to hit this weekend. He told me he's loving it right now. Just kidding, Jerry. Sorry, I got to make it fun for everybody. That we're recording this at the time when kind of the Midwest and the East Coast are getting hit with this cold front. So it's January 23rd recording date, and yeah, we were just reminiscing about how much Jerry loves New York for these cold winters right now,
No
right? So,
way. The complete
uh,
opposite.
yeah. So, to our audience out there, Jerry Aliberti, he is a executive coach and operations consultant in the construction space at Pro-Accel. That he runs and operates his own consulting executive coaching business. So he comes in and helps owners optimize how they are building their business and moving forward and thinking about growth. And so, super excited to have Jerry on the podcast. Jerry, fill us in. Is there anything I'm missing there that you'd love to tell about yourself to the audience?
No, well, Mason, first of all, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's a pleasure. You and I spoke a couple of times, so this is really it's really welcoming, let me say. So I appreciate the opportunity. But I will say this is that the majority of my work has been niching down and narrowing down into probably one of the largest gaps that this business has is that estimating to project execution gap, right? There's so much pain point. I don't care what size business you have that's in that process. And, when I reach out to contractors, some of them may be a little hesitant. Well, why should I hire someone like you, Jerry? Well, the problem is that there's a lot of bias. There's a lot of political stuff that's happening. There's a lot of preference that's happening. There's a lot of ego and there's a lot of protecting one another in that process where someone like me really helps them push that all to the side, and I'm not emotionally attached to anybody, and I really help shed a lot of light on the lack of synergy that's actually happening in that business, because there's a lot of statistics that show the last 80% of the project is really set by the first 20% of that project, and that first 20% of that project goes all the way back to that those final conversations before that bid gets submitted. So it's a whole process that really needs to be mastered if you really want to grow your business sustainably.
I loved you began touching on it lightly there. That I think some people may, think initially when they hear operations consultant in the construction industry, or a coach, that a bit of what you said, that focusing on that execution from estimating to actual project completion. And they could just be thinking about systems, right? And by systems, I mean, like, hey, I need to get on my people to make sure that they're watching cost, and, and they're doing this diligently, and they're doing this according to certain timelines. And I need to get on my people. And I think, and I'm looking forward to our conversation because you kind of began to touch on it, that, hey, like, there's some people issues there, right? And there's some leadership issues that it goes deeper than just, oh, you got to stay on top of your people, or you need to have a really good, system as to how you do this. Like, um, there could be some people concerns that they could be trying to cover their own butt in regards to how they're doing things. And, there's some leadership and the lack of synergy and some team elements there that aren't working correct in order to make that, happen well. So, I'm super excited because I want to uncover some of that with you. But, um, one of the big questions, both you and I, and by Brady CFO and Pro-Accel, that we discovered that we focus a lot in the same space, right? That, you could certainly work with clients bigger than it, but companies kind of in that lower middle market, definitely not a small mom and pop, general contractor, subcontractor, but hey, this is a business that's looking to grow and scale, wants to grow. They want to figure out how to grow well. They're sorry, excuse me, they're facing some challenges. Um, I This seems like such a silly question to ask, but I think it's really relevant. What's the impact of not building a business ready to grow and scale? What's the impact of it for an owner to be thinking about? That what's the impact on that owner of not building a business that's ready to grow and scale?
I think we need to go a little further back and really understand what is a business that's ready to grow and scale as well, right? There's multiple phases that a person goes through. There's that beginning stage where you're just trying to figure out what's going to stick. You're trying to find that proper market that is really going to bring you profitable work as well. Now, figuring that you're beyond that and you're starting to hire your first couple of hires, which are the most imperative and the most critical, uh, what is going to allow you to grow? And one is really understanding what a top pursuit looks like for you. What is the most profitable type of work that you can possibly niche down to and become the expert in that niche? And then eventually over time, you're going to want to diversify and take on some more riskier projects as well. Next is really understanding what your numbers are, not just throwing unit prices to a project. Is if you're a labor intensive if you're a labor intensive subcontractor, are you actually tracking costs where your estimators really understand if those numbers that are going in are actually going to turn into something fruitful? Right? I can't tell you how many contractors just have this book of unit prices. And they just throwing numbers. Well, every single project has got its own personality, its own characteristics. You need to be able to build a crew up, a crew from the ground up, in order to develop that unit price. Now, if you're a GC and you're hiring subcontractors, who are your true partners? A little bondable, which tells you a very positive story about that subcontractor as well. Is and then also, are you still is the business still relying on you as an owner? I remember when I just started consulting, when I was switching from being in the construction side of the business for 19 years and switching to Pro-Accel. I was talking to a very, very successful business owner, and he's like, Jared, to the core of what you need to do as a consultant is help contractors understand if their business is sellable. Understanding what makes a business sellable, all all that goes into that is all you need to know to help a contractor understand, to help them become growth ready. Right? And what makes a business sellable is, one, they need to have good cash flow. They need to be a profitable business, right? That's the money side of the equation. They need to understand what a good pursuit looks like. So, selling off your assets, that's just, your assets are your assets. The amount of equipment that you own is the amount of equipment that you own. It is what it is. But your backlog is what really makes that business worth a much greater valuation. But if you're not profitable and you're not cash flowing, more backlog means more risk, which lowers the valuation, right? So you need to have really good backlog, and you need to have numbers that someone like you helps them understand if they're cash flow ready, if they and if it's a business, and also, can the business run without, and that's where a lot of companies also get stuck, is because they're getting to that 20, that 50, that $100 million stage. They got multiple PMs, they got multiple supers who have many more foremen. Are they are the right people in the right roles where they're able to understand the urgency and the responsibility and the outcomes that their positions must deliver day in and day out, where they're not relying on the owner? And a lot of the times the owner is they're their own bottleneck. They're that very person who can't get out of the business because they're stuck in that micromanagement stage. And listen, I sympathize for them because it's their baby. It's their baby. They don't want to just let go. Well, you gotta let go, right? So I unpacked a lot over there, and I can really get into the weeds of all that, but I'm trying to stay top level.
I love what you brought up about, and I think it's a concept that's being thrown around a lot about, making your business sellable. Like literally, I was in an event the other day, and a general contractor came up, and he said, "Yeah, I'm aware of the exit planning, but like that's way off in the future. I'm wanting to grow." And it's like, well, uh, the two actually go hand in hand together. That actually, to grow well, to create a predictable level of growth, you actually want to put the two and two hand to hand together. And the reality of sometimes we walked into client situations where, for the past couple of years, they've been stuck at a certain revenue range and they've not been able to push past it. And they are struggling figuring out, how do we get past, say, 30 million in sales? Like, how do we actually break this threshold and create something that's much bigger than this? Because, and I think the risk in all of this, right, is that, say, for that business, and I'm just giving an example, um, they weren't thinking they were just trying to think about how to get to 25 to 30 million in revenue, but they weren't thinking continuously about what are we building and how are we thinking now about if we want to be 100 million in 5 years now, what do we need to start doing now to get to that point and what's relevant now? They were just thinking about the next 6 months, basically, right? That, we hit 25, 30 million. This is great. But they constantly need to be thinking about the next stage because the fact that they weren't got them stuck. That they got, basically it's this concept of what got them there isn't what's going to get them to the next stage. And that what they've encountered is because they weren't thinking about these things. And like you said, that, there's some control freak aspect to this. They've had immense turnover of employees that said, I'm done working for this firm. Like, I don't see, a path where I can actually be given more responsibility, accountability. Like these guys, they just actually want to control everything, right? Like they're not letting me grow. I want accountability. I want to grow in this, and they're not really letting me. They've encountered immense churn. They've encountered increasing operating costs, even though their revenue has stayed the same. So their margins have shrunk. And certainly they're not making nearly as much money as owners as they would like to make. So I mean, I look at all this and I say, yeah, these are the risk of like not thinking about growth all the time. Like I am thinking about that next stage. And I'm not saying that this business, as an example, this case study, that it's going to die today. No, but like I'm going to tell you, like the owners are incredibly frustrated. Like literally, we have walked through several conversations where literally they're thinking to themselves, "What am I doing? Should I just go back and get a corporate job?" Like, what am I'm like, they're at that where it's just like, I feel like I'm banging my head against the wall and I just don't know that this is gonna work. And I literally look at it just, hey, if we began this growth planning appropriately just a couple years ago, you wouldn't be stuck here for a multi-year just ceiling at this point. And you wouldn't be in this point of frustration where you're just grinding and you're working 80 hours a week and you feel like you're not going anywhere. So um we've kinda talked about the impacts of not thinking about growing, appropriately and thinking ahead. We've talked about some of the benefits that, hey, it gets you kind of out of these weeds. What would you say are the key principles to growth in a construction business? Like, if I could narrow it down, like, what do you want our audience to say or walk away with and say, "Please consider these top things." Like, these are the things you gotta focus on.
For one, you need a plan, right? So you said it before. A lot of people just don't have that plan. I mean, what's, what are your strengths and what are the opportunities that lie ahead, and then understanding what are the boulders that are going to be in your way, and how are you going to counter that? So one is having that plan, and then two, for you to grow, you need cash. You need to really master your cash flow. You need to have a certain amount of cash put away for the rainy days. And you need to be profitable as well. So you need to figure that out first. One time I got a call from a contractor. They were sitting at 5 million for many years, and the next generation was coming in, and he said, in the next 5 years, I want to become a $50 million a year company, maybe $100 million a year company. Well, after a couple of conversations, I asked, well, you know, how's your cash flow? He says, I'm paying my payroll 1 week at a time. I don't have any more money to pay beyond 1 week. And it's like, well, that's your problem, right? That's a major problem that you need to fix. And there's a lot that goes into that. And it's probably because they're just taking on work that's not aligned with what is the best interest of the company as well, and aligned with the strength. So, back to what I said before, another piece of that. So aside from the cash flow and the profit, and starting off with a plan as well, is really going after the right work and really knowing what that right work looks like. If you're a larger contractor, you can take on more risk. You're going to need to take on more risk to keep that engine, well oiled as well. Um, Also, is what are the next strategic hires that you need to take on? Who are the next promotions and within your organization that you should be looking into promoting as well? I mean, it all comes down to your people. The first 10 years of my career, I never knew what an SOP was. If you handed an SOP to one of the people that were training me, they would laugh at me, right? They were very competent people. They didn't need a piece of paper telling them how to go about a change order, and understand and identify a change order. well, this is a different generation, so obviously it's more of a buzzword, right? Yeah, I don't want to call it a buzzword because it is really critical to have that operating manual. But what good is an operating manual if you don't have any champions in the business who are actually going to care about that enough, right? So it really does come down to your people. And when contractors call me and they're telling me that they're stumped with their growth, or they're pounding and they're raising their hands and I need structure because I'm working 70-hour weeks and I can't handle this. My first question is who are your people and what are their capabilities? Because if they're very capable people and they're very competent people and you hired and you have the right people in the right roles and you did really good hiring, you're not going to feel that way. You're really not going to feel that. And so again, it's another really large topic. I'm just trying to scratch the surface here to engage in more conversation, but I hope I answered, your question and up some thought provoking comments.
No, I'd love to kinda dive into some of these points that you brought up. How many times and when we talk about plan, hone in for me there because I have my image of what a business plan should look like, but for our audience, when you say have a plan, can you kinda detail that out a bit further? Because this is I totally agree with you that, like, this is the starting point, and how many businesses you and I have probably walked into where you're like, "So what's the five-year plan?" Make money. I don't know, walk me through the definition of a good plan.
You're right. My 5-year plan is just to survive, right? Survive.
Yep.
Listen, I mean, it really depends on what their vision is. I mean, do they want to grow 20% in 5 years? Do they want to stay steady in 5 years? Are they working 70-hour weeks and they want to start being able to take, 4 weeks of vacation a year and not have the business fall apart? It all really depends. It all starts with your visions, right? You you need to have those two, three, four, maybe five different um, vision um, initiatives first, and then what are the strategies that need to be in place to accomplish those visions? And then also, what are the goals for at least the next 12 months that are going to bring you closer to that vision? It's like it's the basic concept of the EOS system, right? What are the rocks that you need to move every single quarter to get to accomplish those strategies that are going to get you closer to your vision? So some larger contractors, they want to go from 500 million to $1 billion. They want to expand geographically. Well, that requires a lot more attention to understanding the 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 geographies that they want to expand to. But if you're a $50 million year company in 5 years, you want to get to 75 million, and you as an owner want to continue to step out of the business and focus more on strategy and backlog. Okay, well, what are the strategies? First, we need to understand what's happening in your business. Why are you not able to step out of your business? How do your hires look? What are the next couple of hires that are going to allow you to actually perform that as well? So many businesses, and I speak about this a lot in my marketing. So many businesses think that, well, I'm a $50 million year company. I want to get to 75 million. I'm going to hire a VP who is at a $500 million year company. They're going to know exactly what to do. No, they're not going to know exactly what to do because they've been a part of the system their entire career. They don't know how to build the system. You need someone who knows how to build the system. What I tell people too, and is I'm going to be a bit biased here, is consulting and advising to the most part is not an additional cost to your business. It is a cost of business. It's just that you are so bogged down in your business as an owner. Your people only understand how to build structures, right? That consultant is helping you offset the cost of trying to figure it out yourself. Someone needs to implement that system in the business. Someone needs to be able to help you with execution and strategy and understand who your next promotions are and what these new roles look like. Someone needs to do it in your business. You either got to spin your wheels and find yourself going in this vicious circle by having people in your business who don't really understand that, or you're going to hire a consultant or an advisor who's working with contractors all around the country and beyond, who sees what's working and what's not working. And that's really important. You're telling me these multi-billion dollar year companies don't have consultants and advisors? Of course they do, right? So stop thinking that consulting and advising and hiring a fractional CFO instead of taking on a full-time CFO is an additional cost to your business. It's not. It's the cost of running the business. Take baby steps before you start hiring these big roles that are just going to disappoint you, right? The same thing with fractional CFO. Why take the leap to hire a full-time CFO when you could hire a fractional CFO and help build out that next step?
I'm gonna start breaking you on my sales calls, Jerry. And, that's my first takeaway from this podcast, but, um, uh, to your point, and I just wanna emphasize for the audience here, um, having to what Jerry said about planning, you gotta write it down too, and the reason is Jerry brought up after planning cash flow, and one of the things even we do in Brady CFO, I'm not trying to just sell our services, but generally, it's just healthy to have a good credit line in place, just to have some wiggle room to, it's I hear sometimes business owners, they come in and say, "Oh, but there's an origination fee that I have to pay to go pay for the credit line, or I may have to if I don't use it, I have to pay a fee for not using it, et cetera." And, like, it's an insurance premium, yeah, that's all that you should think about it as, it's an insurance premium. A lot harder to get the capital, when you need it the most versus when you're doing well and you don't need it as bad, so might as well get it. But the reason I'm saying this is if you don't even have a written plan, going to the bank and trying to go get that credit line, near impossible, right? That they're going to want to understand what are you doing, where are you going, that this isn't just some hobby business that you're about ready to drive into the ground. They want to know that you have a plan to ultimately pay them back. And so you're going to have an operating business out from years from now that is eventually going to get them paid back and that they're going to invest time in, doing all the underwriting and getting you set up with a line of credit. They have all their back end costs too, and that they want to know if they're going to invest time in you, that you have a plan, that you're going to want to be in a relationship with them as a bank for some time to come, right? So I love what you mentioned, plan, cash flow. Um, but the reality too is, you mentioned some EOS elements there. I love a lot of elements of EOS that we implement EOS and Brady CFO. We also have helped many clients on EOS, but that idea that, and I love what you brought up that I think that there's a mistake, because one, you have to have a plan, but you actually have to make time to start to achieve the goals towards that plan. And I'm talking about actually reserving time in your calendar and schedule that you say, these are the objectives this quarter that will help me get closer to that goal. And you actually have to block time out to make that happen. And you have to force it. And I realize that there's a million fires that may need to be put out to our audience, and Jerry's fully aware of this too. But yeah, there's a tons of fires just dealing with the day to day. But if you're not parking some time to focus on that, there's actually an immense opportunity cost. I think Jerry was bringing up, hey, consulting advisors or fractional CFOs or these resources that construction businesses can use. They may look at that and say, dang, that feels expensive. That feels like a cost. And it's like, yeah, but the alternative is that you just stay where you're at for a few years and you end up like the case study I gave at the beginning of this podcast that, okay, you're maintaining the same revenues and you have shrinking margins. That's your alternative cost to this, right? So one way or another, you're going to pay. Why not pay for growth? Like that's a lot more fun. Although it can be hard, that's a lot more fun. Why not pay for growth, right? Um, so I'd love for you to emphasize more. Like you said, I love what you said there, Jerry, that because a lot of people think, oh, I just need to build out a system and an SOP, and then people are gonna follow the SOP. And I think if any one of us knows human nature, there are people that love following SOP, and there are people that literally will take it and throw it in the trash. And just like, ah, man, like if you told them to read a 10-page document, like, kill me now, type of thing. We both know I'm one of those people, even right. That if you told me to read a 20-page or 15-page SOP, I'm I'm gonna struggle in that. Like I'm probably gonna get distracted and want to do something else and just let me go get work done. Like, right? Let me go get the things done. I'm ready to go. Let's just have a conversation and move on from this. Walk us through a little bit more of that in regards to hiring and staffing and looking for the right people for your organization. That when a company's looking to grow, those key strategic hires, what should they be looking for? What character traits? The people aspect? Like, let's talk about that.
Yeah, sure. But I'll first mention too, uh, hot and heavy on LinkedIn. It's my main marketing source. And I'll tell you this, everybody talks about SOPs, SOPs this, SOPs that. First of all, you don't want to turn your people in this business into robots. And I don't care how many SOPs you develop, it's just going to collect dust on a closet somewhere if you don't have the right culture in place of people who actually care about following a process as well. Okay. So it starts with culture before you start investing in tens of thousands of dollars creating SOPs that you need to monitor every single day as well. Now, my hiring is as well. I created a lot of videos about this stuff as well too, and you really need to understand what stage you are in your business, and there's certain skills that you need to hire for. Right, starting with estimating. I mean, that certainly is one of my superpowers. If you're hiring a junior estimator, you need someone who's coachable. You need someone who understands, who has the competence level of learning how to turn lines into an actual budget that's realistic, that the field can actually execute on, right? And then larger companies have estimator level ones, estimator level twos, and then you got your junior estimators and your senior estimators, and then your senior estimator one, senior estimator two, and chief estimators, and it goes on and on and on. So it's really understanding what are the proper skills that that person has. Same thing with project management, same thing with supervisors, right? A lot of companies like to promote their foreman into supervisor roles. Well, is that foreman competent enough to start taking care of paperwork? It's 2026 at this recording. So you need to understand how to use software. I had one client who told me, Jerry, our foremen need to record hours, but they refuse to get on an app to record hours. And then we gave them pieces of paper and they still refuse to do it. Well, get rid of them. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Well, it's not easy to rotate them. Well, then you need to understand what your business needs for that next level of growth. I mean, if these people are going to be stuck in the dinosaur age, then stop fighting it. Stop fighting it. Know what you want out of your business. And that gets into my next thing is really understanding what that role, what the outcomes and the responsibilities that that role must be accountable for and achieve day in and day out. I love to give people probation periods, right? So if an assistant PM wants to go into a project management role and needs to start running their own projects, what is that role? What are the outcomes that that role must achieve to make the company successful? Give them a probation period. Say, hey, Mason, you want to go from being an assistant PM to a PM? These are the outcomes I'm expecting for you to deliver on. This is the next um um this is the next project I'm going to put you on. I'm going to give you a certain probation period. What do you need from me for you to be successful? And then you need to work with them on that as well. They're always going to need some level of training, right? And then every 30 days, you're going to sit down with them and you're going to make sure that they are getting closer to those outcomes that you're requiring them to achieve. And if they're not ready for that role, they need to be open to the conversation of having, well, if you're not able to achieve these outcomes, you're going to have two options. One, you're going to be demoted back to assistant project management. And don't be bashful on that. It is what it is. Not everybody is cut out for being a PM. Or two, we're going to have to cut ties. And these are the tough conversations you need to have because they're one sure way of destroying your profits in your business is just having the wrong people in the wrong roles or having the right people in the wrong roles or the right roles for the wrong people, vice versa, however it looks for your business as well. It all comes down to your people. Construction, You need to have the right people in the right roles to take you to where you want to go.
While you were talking there, it made me think of a question, and this happens, I feel like, all the time, so I'm really interested to hear your take on it. That, I'm thinking from the perspective of, say business owner has, I don't know, 30, 40 million in sales, and, um, you know, the business owners themselves that, they have their own personal strengths, et cetera. Um, they wanna go hire for a role, but they really wanna hire a junior person to be able to, keep it on budget. They wanna hire a junior person for a role that, either them as the owner or, the supervisor involved that might, supervise that junior role, that role is so I wouldn't say unique and new, but it's novel to the owner, and what I mean by that is that that is not the owner's bread and butter, nor is it the supervisor's bread and butter, and I'm talking, say for instance, for a growing, business that they may be looking at making their first business development hire, or, usually a lot of owners in construction, they do have some estimating chops, but, they're not absolutely great estimators, right? And they say, I want to hire a junior estimator. And, but there's not really somebody that has the tons of experience to train that person and to help develop that person. And I've heard a lot of conversations from owners that they come and say, "Oh yeah, but like we'll build them up. They'll just, we're going to get the right people and they're going to, just get it, and that they'll get it." What's your take on that?
I spoke to a contractor about 5 years ago who told me they only like to hire managers who are max 5 years into the business because they don't want them to come in with bad habits and they want to help them create the habits that they wish to have in the business. I just found out 6 months ago that this person is going out of business. So I'm not saying that that's the reason why they're going out of business, but I can tell you this is that a lot of contractors are scared to hire larger salaried employees that are 20, 30 years into the business because they cost an extra 50, $100,000 more. Well, isn't that extra 50, $100,000 more worth it when they're able to bring you millions of dollars of profit on the project that the 25-year-old isn't able to? You need both in your business. You need the seasoned and you need the unseasoned. So what I'm getting at with this is, yeah, I get it. The person who's 20 years into the business, they're stuck in their old ways, right? But goes back to hiring. Hey, you want to work for this company. We want you to work for this company, right? You need to be humble as well. We want you to work for this company, but these are the expectations of this role. Are you willing to change some of your ways to accommodate the culture of this business? Something as simple as that, everybody fails to do. And I just don't understand why. Because they're scared to have that conversation because they're worried about the reaction that they're going to get. Ladies and gentlemen, you are answering to the banks that have your house and all your own personal, your own personal assets that are on hold. Don't be worried about having those conversations. You need to tell people straight up. I understand you got your ways of doing things. I want to learn how you do your ways, how you build projects as well. But I got my ways of doing things, and this is my business. And there's going to be certain things I don't know what those things are yet. When I get to know who you are, there's going to be certain things I'm going to ask of you to change. Are you willing to open up to that? If they say no, they say no. If they say yes, then you know what? You're gonna have to hold them accountable to when they start giving you resistance later on.
Yeah, I even you and I as business owners right now, I think that it's even more real, right? Is just that impact that you're sitting there and, I think too, many people are afraid of having the very difficult conversations. I made a post about on LinkedIn, um, that I like, and I heard another business owner say once, and I mean all due respect, he was saying it in humility. They said, yeah, my business doesn't really fire people. And then he went on to say, I've struggled with dealing with people issues. And so I was very grateful that at least he was saying it. But if he missed the second part, he was almost saying it with pride. Like we don't fire people. And it's like, good organizations that as you grow, that even the people that got you to a certain level are not going to be the same people that get you to the next level. And you just have to get comfortable with the evolution that you are running a business, and that the business has to work for everybody involved in it. But if the business has to be evolve around one particular employee, oh, every other team member is gonna hate that. That they're gonna be resentful against you. But the reality, and I made a post about it on LinkedIn that some business owners really struggle with this. But I was in Starbucks the other day and I was just, working away, and it happened to be that the store manager was sitting right next to me, and she brought an employee to the table with her and had the best conversation I could have ever experienced in regards to giving feedback about that the shift managers were struggling with the defensiveness of that employee, the defensive attitude when they would, try to coach them. And she said, I need you to work on this. And I mean, given that she was already defensive, that could have been a totally escalated situation, right? Um, but this store manager did it with precision, was so good at it. And I'm just for perspective, most store managers at Starbucks, not fully college educated, is probably working through college, probably have other circumstances, et cetera. Like, but they got training, right? And that came probably from some level of training at Starbucks. And regardless of what you think about Starbucks as a company, it's $1 billion machine for a reason. And it's because they figured out how to even coach and train their employees to have difficult conversations, right? I mean, it's a critical nature of growth that if you're not willing to get comfortable with that, you're going to leave a lot of dollars on the table for your business. Like I try to put given we are CFOs that, or at least Brady CFO is that there's a financial spin to this that if you don't figure out how to have difficult conversations and how to, make sure that you're holding people accountable, you are financially leaving a ton of money on the table. And it's not just that the bank's calling. Yes, they will call, but your profitability in your business and what your business can look like, if you don't have the gumption to have the hard conversations, you're leaving money on the table.
Hey, listen, for 19 of my 23 years, I was in New York City construction. It was all union work. So, maybe working with New York City unions for 19 years, every single day was an abundance of difficult conversations and tough conversations and trying to keep your cool. Right. So for me, it's a piece of cake. I mean, I could almost market my executive coaching just on helping people navigate tough conversations and keeping your cool and keeping your emotions in check as well. So it's very easy for me, and I do agree with you that a lot of owners, to the core of their issues, is because they're allowing so much to happen day in and day out, because they're scared to challenge an individual, because they're scared that they're going to make a move and leave. Not everybody, it's not easy making a move in your career. I mean, I made three moves in my career, and the grass is not always greener on the other side, as many people think, unless you're in a really, really toxic environment. For me, I realized after my third move that the reason why I was making moves was more because I had my entrepreneurial itch, right? And I just didn't know at that time. So back to your tough conversations, it's construction, ladies and gentlemen. You're gonna have a lot of tough conversations. And you know what? Your clients are gonna be on edge too. And you need to have tough conversations with your clients as well. And you need to keep your cool. Just really quickly, one quick story. One of my clients a couple months back, probably more than a couple months at this point, sent me a text saying, that's it, I'm done. I'm gonna send this email. And they forward me the email. And this email was gonna destroy a major relationship that he had in his business. I said, listen, before you send out this email, let me just read it a couple of times. Let me gather my thoughts. Give me 15 minutes, I'll give you a call. 15 minutes later, I gave him a call. I painted a different perspective. This was a subcontractor. I come from the self-performed GC world. Yes, they still do exist in this world. I don't know why everybody doesn't think that self-performed GCs don't exist, especially in the heavy civil space. Maybe not in the commercial space. So I called up my client and we spoke for 10, 15 minutes, and I repositioned his message. He calls me back a week later. He says, Jerry, not only did the owner applaud me for my response, they actually gave me a $200,000 change order that I'm going to make, I think $25,000, $30,000 that has to get done right away. And my guys are not busy. And this was the perfect opportunity for me. I said, well, that's the beauty of having, an advisor and a coach on you as well, is to help you grow and paint a different perspective, because you're too caught up in the moment, right? So these are the tough conversations that I need to have with my clients as well is, hey, put your ego to the side, relax, calm down. Let me help you navigate this conversation. And being an owner, especially, it there's almost not a single day where you're not navigating these conversations.
Just to kinda start to bring us a little bit to a close the episode, Jerry, that one final thing I wanna get some ideas from you, given your very practical experience in working with many construction businesses throughout your career, but also advising many construction business owners. Um, what are the profit traps that you see that exist in a lot of small, mid-sized construction businesses that, where do companies tend like, what are the top things that come to mind as to where companies lose their profitability, like lose their butts that, yeah, they go get the job, they think that they're doing well, but man, the actual numbers end up not being so great. Like, what are these profit traps? Like, what can owners say that, okay, these are the things I need to go work on?
So there are many, but I would say the top, 4, 5, 6, I would say are one, their estimating is not evolving, right? Your estimating needs to be evolving and you need historical data from your field and you need real live input from your field to see how your numbers need to evolve. Because as you're growing, you're taking on larger, more complex work, right? um, the skill sets of your people are not evolving, which drastically hurts your profit as well, right? So if you're accustomed to knocking out jobs that are 1, 2 months long, schedule is always important, but it's not as important if you're knocking out 6 month jobs and 1 year projects at $20 million, right? So the skill sets of your people need to evolve to understand that there's certain tools and within that arena that need to evolve with that as well. I mentioned before, a lot of my work is getting niched down to that whole project handle. Okay, well, now you got an award. Now you got this budget. How is that budget and all the assumptions getting out to the field? And how are you starting that first 20% duration of your project where you're building the proper momentum that's going to carry the final 80% of that project as well? And then getting to the project execution side is, there's different things for GCs and subcontractors is how are you planning? I mean, it all comes down to your planning. If you're a subcontractor, you planning far ahead and you're educating the GC of what you need because your GC doesn't know your trade as good as you. Are you educating that GC to so they can plan better for you to get more of a runway to accomplish your work? And if you're a GC, are you coordinating properly? And how does that look in your business with the subs to know what they need? One of the first things I was told when I started running my own jobs as a self-performed GC when I was managing my own subcontractors was, hey, if the subs fail on this business, don't ever, ever make those subs fail because of your lack of planning. Make sure they're failing because of their lack of planning. It's a very simple concept to understand, and understanding that concepts allows you to 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 make certain decisions throughout the day where that becomes, you know, a reality, an actual plan for growth because you want your partners, you want your subcontractors who are your partners to succeed. If they succeed, you succeed as a business as well. Because if they're not making money on those jobs, they're going to start pulling people and they're going to be making bad decisions and it's going to mess up your project as well. And coming from my background, this is exactly how I'm able to help a lot of my clients because I held those very positions.
I love that phrase that you said that if and I'm gonna paraphrase, and if I screwed something up, say it. Um, don't let your business or the job, fail to succeed as a result of your subcontractor's lack of planning. Say it again. I wanna hear it again from you. You mentioned it. Yeah.
Oh, what my boss had told me back then
Yeah,
is,
yeah. It was so good.
yeah, so again, I come from the self-performed GC world where I self-perform my own worker. I'm sorry, I self-perform my own trades and I manage my own subs. And I was always told that if the subs fail on any of my projects, make sure it's never because of my lack of planning. It's because they failed on their own. Because we need them to succeed.
Yep. I love that. I'm probably gonna have, our podcast editor just clip that right there. So, Sydney, you heard me on this one. So, good stuff. Well, thank you, Jerry. That hopefully our audience got some great insight from this. That Jerry just brings a depth of many years of being in the trenches of actual construction businesses. I love it too because yeah, Jerry is from New York, and the reality, I mean, here in Houston, yeah, do we have high rises, but this is a suburban sprawl out here, and in tight quarters of New York City, and those areas that building. I just yeah, conceptually, having such tight spaces, working with all the cranes and stuff, I couldn't imagine it, and so Jerry has a breadth of experience and now, executive coaching and consulting. And Jerry, where can the audience find out more about you? Where can they learn more about you, brother?
So I do work nationwide. I'm located in New York, but I work nationwide and beyond if the opportunity arises. But you can go on my website, www.pro-accel.com. I'm hot and heavy on LinkedIn. You could always find me on LinkedIn. I post every single day. Go on my website. I got tons of videos. Sign up for my newsletter, which gets released every single Saturday. I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube, not as much as LinkedIn as well. Or you could write me an email, Jerry with a J, Jerry at pro-accel.com. And let's set up an introductory call. It doesn't hurt to introduce ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, brother. Really appreciate you diving in on this with me, and looking forward to future conversations that we'll have as well. So, and thank you for the audience for listening in. Sorry, Jerry, I didn't mean to cut you off as you were saying bye there.
And thanks for having me on this.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Everybody, stay warm out there as our recording dates now, but we should release this soon. Please stay warm out there, y'all. Catch you later. Thanks. Hi, everyone. So, if you enjoyed today's episode and you found value, or it raised some questions for you about the next best steps for managing your finances in your construction business, please reach out to us at bradycfo.com. There's a contact page there where you can fill out, and that will come straight over to us. Either that, or you can personally find me on LinkedIn. My name is Mason Brady, and feel free to send me a message, and happy to chat and talk through anything you're facing today, and happy to provide some advice. So thank you all. Appreciate it. See you.